Okay.
That's great. That's great.
Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast is an official Apple podcast presented by the Westport Public Library and the Quick Center for the Arts with me, Miggs Burroughs.
And I'm Trace Burroughs. And today we have Nettie Baker on, the daughter of the legendary drummer Ginger Baker. I'm thrilled about this because I'm a drummer and I followed his career since like I was 16, way back when he was in Cream. So anyhow, Nettie, you've got 3 books you've written about your life with Ginger, Tales of a Rock Star, More Tales of a Rock Star, and Full Cream. Do you want to go in briefly and talk about what's covered in each book?
Well, the initial book is his autobiography, which I ghostwrote with him in 2009, called Hellraiser.
Oh,
and that,
sorry.
You can get that anywhere, and that is his in his own words. But obviously, I wrote that with him, and spent a lot of time with him as he recounted his life to me. So it was all very interesting. And then the other one was my book that I'd actually written before that, but it took me another 10 years to get it out. Is called Tales of a Rockstars Daughter, which goes. It sort of drops backwards and forwards in time, but it's really from 1974 to 1985. And then my More Tales is sort of punk in London, but also that drops back to when Hendrix came to the house, when we got evicted from our house, and then that goes from 85 to 87. But it also looks forward to the Cream reunion a bit in 2005, and that covers Live Aid. And then Full Cream is a book that I did with my publishers, which is a lot of very rare stuff, family stuff. It's a coffee table book, so that's something slightly different, and it's got some rare archive material that's from our own archive, so stuff people haven't seen that much of before. So, yeah, so it's 4 books in all, and there's another one coming.
So like when I told Miggs, you agreed to be on the show, Miggs sent me this link to a video where Ginger's sitting at his drums and he's ranting about you, really pissed off that you stole his Facebook page. And
well, the problem that we have with that was that only 2 people have seen that, luckily, because that never came out when he was alive because he knew it was incorrect. And he is actually, we've had problems with the police and the social services. He was under safeguarding from social services 3 times. So he was basically worked to death. And at that point, he was isolated from his family, left alone, desperate phone calls, police involved, some very, very bad things. So this was to do with people that were around him that caused a lot of problems when they did the tribute for him in London last year as well, behind the scenes. With some, causing some problems to some very famous people indeed. So, I've got lots of cards and lovely things from him. And in fact, very soon to that video, he was actually emailing us saying, he wanted to see us. So he was coerced into that. So that's some part of some very bad things that happened to him at the end of his life, unfortunately.
So is that all Kudze? Is that the name of his 4th wife?
Yes, I mean, you can look up. We have a lot of problems with that, but now we have actually got some really serious proofs, which is going to be coming out quite soon. You see, the police were called over the last 3 years several times, and social services were on the case a lot.
And why did they have to be called?
And then she had an affair. As soon as he died, she had an affair with a married man who was very rich.
Oh.
So immediately when he died, she was advertising her services on an adult's work website. I don't think I need to say any more, really. Yeah. But we have got proof of everything. So, and also it wasn't just her. There were other people around him who were unscrupulous. So, it was very sad for him at the end, unfortunately. We tried our best, but people who coerce, they really get their hooks in.
Right.
Do you think, was he, mentally...
No, he was mentally very weak from 2015. I went with him to the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp. He performed there in LA. And I went with him. I arranged all that, and we travelled there together. And he was so sick there. We went to Stuart Copeland's house, and Stuart had to call the medics, and they wanted to take him to hospital. And he just kept asking me, "Where am I? Where am I?"
No.
And because he died with no money, because someone else was obviously taking the money, and they just needed him to keep working while they did no work. They were aged 30-something and did no work, and he was nearly 80, and he had to keep going to work to pay the money.
No.
Otherwise, they said they would leave. So it's a very sad story.
Is that how you lost? You mentioned, losing your mansion.
Oh no, the house was lost the first time. I mean, if you read the book, or if you've even seen, the film, Beware of Mr. Baker, that's got stuff to say how he lost his money the first time. I mean, he did it twice, and he just left the country. His second wife was a friend of mine who was a year older than me. So, and then he left the country. He'd given power of attorney to an ex-bank robber who took all his money again. So our mortgage on our house, big house, wasn't being paid. So we all ended up in the street. In 1985, we lost the house.
Go ahead, Nix.
And that's in my third book, More Tales, that tells you about that. And Lemmy's son was staying with us at the time, so he got evicted with us.
Are you friends with any of the other Cream? I guess is this band that sticks. Was my when I was growing up. So that's my big band in my head with him. Are you friends with any of the children of Aruba Red, Natasha, Bruce, or any of Clapton's kids?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time. We were friendly with them, but I mean, sometimes, we have seen them and done things with them. Obviously, we went to Jack's funeral, and so we have, spent time with them, and Margaret, etc., etc. Obviously, we don't know Eric's children because he had them with his last wife, so current wife rather. So we don't know them because they're a different age group. But, I mean, my brother obviously was working with Malcolm Bruce, but there's still, sometimes it's the sort of continuation of the relationship with Jack and my dad is that we sometimes get on with them and we sometimes don't. But, Jack I got on very well with, and, when my mother died, he sent me emails and, I spoke to him quite often before he died via email. So he was a very nice man.
Yeah, we interviewed Aruba Red, and we're asking her about the school because she's a musician.
She performed at one of the tributes to her dad. She performed.
Yeah, it was lovely. But she just mentioned it sounded almost. I don't know. Is your dad? They're known in the bands, for these incredible arguments and conflicts, and breaking up, getting back together. But was that all just kind of comes with the musical passion, or everybody's just edgy?
Well, I mean, as somebody said in the film Beware of Mr. Baker, that for that for people that didn't get along, they worked together a hell of a lot. So I think they worked together a lot because obviously people wanted to see two of Cream rather than one. So they were able to probably get more money in when they were working together. Yeah. But they always fell out. But at the end of their lives, they did make up friends. And I've got some very nice emails. I've got some emails from my dad saying, he was really happy with Jack. And Jack did want to speak to my dad when he was dying. But unfortunately, he didn't phone him. I wish he had done. So they were on good terms when Jack died, which is good.
So Ginger had two sisters, Pat and Cheryl, right?
No, Cheryl is his niece. I don't know where he's got that from. He's got one sister.
I got that off the internet, so.
Cheryl's his niece. He's got two nieces and a nephew and one sister.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and three of us children.
Now, how about there's a picture of you online as a punker. Now, was that just, were you in a punk rock band, or what was that?
No, I'm not musical. I was a punk in, I think when you read the books, you'll understand that there was no star life. So my first book, Tales of a Rockstars Daughter, is about how we lived a life half normal and half starry. And then when we lost money, we were in the normal world. So by the time I was a punk, I was we were on the dole. So, we were on state benefits.
Yeah.
So there was I wasn't in a band, and my sister was. She was in quite a famous punk band called Ribella Ballet, and she played guitar. And then my brother, obviously, he was always playing the drums, so they were musical. But I people sort of think, were we when I was a punk? Was I with famous punks? And the answer is no.
But you went to clubs.
Did your dad ever take you on tour with him?
Yes, I toured twice with Cream around the States and with Blind Faith around the States and Hawaii. So, yeah, we've got loads and loads of movie footage of that. And we own the only footage of Cream on tour, so at the time, so which is quite good. So that comes out from time to time on documentaries and stuff. But, yeah, I mean, I toured, all the time when Cream were on the road, yeah.
Right.
So that's my next book's going to be a bit more about that. So,
are you familiar with, according Murray the K? He
yes. Well, yeah, that's in Hellraiser when he did them. We didn't go. I wasn't there for the Murray the K show, but they did that with the Who.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's some great stories in the book Hellraiser about them when they were all together, and they had a really crazy time. So, yeah, well worth reading that.
One of so Miggs and I, we both saw that Murray the K show. I guess that was the first time the Cream ever played in the States, according to Murray the K, anyhow.
Yes, well, I think it was, and it's really worth reading Hellraiser for the story of that, because it's better if you read it as he told it in his own words, because there's some very funny bits in that, and they really had a mental time, the Who and Cream together. People don't sort of realise how friendly they were with each other. And because, of course, Jack and my dad had already toured with The Who extensively in England as the Graham Bond organisation.
Oh, uh-huh.
So they knew each other. And also Pete Townshend's dad was a jazz player from the time when my dad was playing jazz and hanging out in Archer Street, bearing in mind he was a bit older than the others. So he also knew Pete Townshend's dad. So he respected them as actual musicians. So the Townsend pair, father and son. So there's a lot in the book, his book Hellraiser, that's very worth reading.
So Jimi Hendrix came to your house, you say?
He did indeed, yes. And that, I mean, my dad talks about that in Hellraiser, and I talk about it briefly in my book, More Tales of a Rockstars Daughter, as well. Yeah, I mean, they were friendly, and Hellraiser has a whole chapter on Hendrix which details their relationship. But he came round one night, and I saw him. I came down and he beckoned me over, and I sat on his lap for half an hour. So, very nice man.
Well, so now
that was normal,
I mean, they were different than their stage personalities, obviously.
Well, yes. I mean, and it was normal for people, like that to come to the house. It wasn't unusual. So, but, being children are always quite nosy about who's this famous person. But, I mean, he was very, very quiet and, very nice guy. So, I knew he was supposedly famous, but those times it's just like your parents having their friends round, so it wasn't really anything. I mean, the thing for me was that he said come over and come and sit on my lap and talk to me, which was so that's obviously why it more stuck in my mind than it probably would have done otherwise. So, and obviously now it's a shame no one took a photo. But I mean, now people just go mad. They can't believe it, and it's a great thing when you're just on a train or something, someone's got a Hendrix T-shirt and you think, I'm probably the only person here that's actually met Hendrix, so it's
there's
quite a cool thing.
Well, speaking of those kind of close encounters, there's one sort of scandalous story from your book, I guess, with George Harrison wanting to buy you. Right? Or is that the right term?
Yes. Well, actually, I just got a very nice message from Patty Boyd, who's just read the book, and she really enjoyed it, so which was great. Yes. Well, there was a sort of a thing going round there, and I've sort of very much downplayed that story. Because
go ahead, sorry.
Things are very, were very different in the 70s. And I sort of, was saying that, obviously they thought it was very exciting to have a girl who was slightly underage, to them that was, people do go mad for St. George, but I'm afraid St. George was a human being like everybody else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, quite a. Well, actually, there's so they probably couldn't get away with she was just 17 today. I mean,
yeah, right. Yeah.
Well,
you know
no,
I mean.
you see, we're a bit, in England, it's the age of consent 16 here.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
So we're a little bit, naughtier than you, but so at that time I was 15, and that's, when he asked me how old are you, and I said 15, then he was like, oh yeah, that's quite interesting, and that happened to me a lot. But obviously, my dad was there, but the two girls were, I don't think Patty cared, but the other lady in question wasn't thrilled. But I thought it was great, but obviously when you're young you don't realise anything like that, so I had a great time. I thought it was wonderful, but
So did you go to any crazy parties? And you have any good stories of debauchery and that thing?
Well, I mean they are, but my mum's debauchery stories are more in more Tales of a Rockstars Daughter, and they're more really from when I was in my punk days, because I was very, very innocent when I was, hanging out with stars or things like that happened. I was. In those days in England, well, I don't suppose everywhere in the 70s, a lot of young people in middle class sort of places were very innocent. I mean, so nothing particularly debauched actually happened to me.
Yeah.
Until much later. Well, I don't suppose. I mean, more Tales of a Rockstars, which is a lot of drugs, really, and punk stuff, and, it's sort of a bit darker. So, yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And there were parties every 5 minutes. But depending on, people that have lived that sort of life at the time, will recognise it. But, yeah, I mean, there are some parties, 70s parties with drug connections. And, mainly most of my books are about parties. People sometimes go, oh, there's too many parties. So if you don't like parties, it's not for you.
So what does it mean to be I was in England. We both went to England on our own separate times. I was in England way back in 1965, 66. That was the age of the mods and the rockers. They eventually turned into punks. But so what does it mean to be a punk? You said you're not a musician. So is that just going to clubs and, with spiked hair?
No, a punk. No, well, it is the looks, but it's more your attitude, really. I mean, the people there's a film called She's a Punk Rocker UK, which you can find on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
By some people, this band Rubella Ballet, Zilla Minx, she made the film, and they've toured the States quite recently, and they're going to do She's a Punk Rocker USA as well as their next film. So you can find it online. And I'm in that. I mean, it's a state of mind, really. And I think very much in my two books, Tales of a Rockstar's Daughter and More Tales of a Rockstar's Daughter, I really in detail address that. Even, it's more, it's not just silly. I go into things like, it's an ideology. Some people say, oh, punk died in 77 and that's it. It's not really. It's an ideology that can live and live. So it's quite important as well. So I think it's very important, punk. So,
what is the ideology of that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of individualism, and it's also to do with, it is individualism, and it's to do with it's no gods, no masters, really. So it's sort of anarchy, but anarchy not in chaos, but anarchy as in, it's like very much a co-op, do it yourself, and don't listen to the establishment, don't tell the truth to the establishment, don't bow to authority, and don't do as you're told. Very much. And, think for yourself, which I think is very important. Don't go with ask a question all the time. Always ask a question. Always find out what the other side of an argument is. So I think, very much that, and being very strong. And it was also, punk was the first time that, women were equal. Mm-hmm. And I go into that quite a lot as well in my books. So,
did you have a motorcycle or one of those souped up?
No, nothing like that. I mean, it's punk. English punk's very different from what it was in America. I mean, it's very sort of to do with. We were sort of like the Bromley contingent, which was Boy George and Susie Sue. They were before us, but they were very similar. And John Savage writes, that the suburban punks were very much took the idea and changed it slightly. So I've used the quote of his in my second book as well. And he says Bromley, where they came from, and Harrow, where I came from. So it's to do with the sound of the suburbs, is another great song by the Members, which is sort of sums it up really. And we really were suburban punk, sort of, trying to get away from things that were happening at the time, and also the town centres were being knocked down and they were trying to make things more corporate. So for a time there was a big time of creativity in the mid-80s. So it's quite interesting because I could have been a punk at the time, but obviously I wasn't, because I was hanging out with the royal family and people like that. So, unfortunately, I couldn't say that, God save the Queen. So I came late. I'm a second wave punk, even though I'm the right age to be a first wave punk.
Yeah. So with your dad on the road from when you were in the early '60s, whatever, your dad was getting popular and famous on the road. Who was there a disciplinarian at home, or was there anybody to kind of try to tell you the right path?
No.
There wasn't nobody.
No, it wasn't like that. And the books really, really addressed that, I think, quite strongly, how it was very chaotic upbringing. When we started off, even when Cream, we didn't move. Cream split up in November '68. Well, we didn't move out of a maisonette where I shared a bedroom with my parents until the summer of 1968. So we were in a tiny little place. And then I went from a state school to a posh school, which, was this incredible jump. And then the marriage was horrifically violent. And of course, by the time we got to a big house where my dad was, having sex with 10 million groupies every 5 minutes and affairs, and my mother completely came unglued. So the house was like the worst sort of what could happen in in a project house, you lot would understand, that sort of estate. That was happening within a rich house, So it was really horrific. Suicide attempts, drugs, incredible fighting. So, and then I had 2 younger siblings who I sort of had to look after. So, and my dad was very scary. So if he didn't like what you were doing, you would get whacked. Both of them hit us, but not so bad with that. But it was pretty scary. Although when I became a teenager, obviously I became very friendly with my dad and spent, from say 1975 to 1982, we were inseparable. So obviously that tale of a Rockstars Daughter covers the time where I did everything with my dad. People used to invite us to things together. So, all the invitations were off too. So,
it was. Where'd you get the strength to go through all that chaos and violence?
I don't know.
No, but what pulled you through? Some people don't get through it. Some people just go over the edge. What do you think got you through all that?
I've got no idea. I just think, you're just born with the personality you're born with. When I was very small and my parents were arguing really loudly, it was quite distressing. But I sort of invented another world for myself, really, which was always very optimistic, a fantasy life of, fun and stuff like that. And I think that's how I did it, really. I sort of blocked it out and became resilient, that it didn't affect me too badly. I think it definitely did, because I had a lot of problems at school with, tantrums, and, I've had terrible, I can't have relationships. I'm absolutely hopeless. So, it has had a knock-on effect, but, I've survived to become relatively normal, I suppose. Some people say, when I used to hang out with my parents, in the polo years and that, people used to say, oh, God, you're so sensible compared to your parents. I don't know.
And what led you to, have you written other things? You're obviously an accomplished writer. So have you been asked by other, not necessarily celebrities, but anybody to ghostwrite or help, or have you had offers to write biographies for other people?
Well, I'd like to do that, but, I have sort of said, I think they should all have had me, because I think I'm a pretty good ghostwriter. Everyone that's read Hellraiser has said, we can hear him speak, and so you can't hear me in it at all. So I think that is a great compliment. But no, I mean, I am writing some other things that they take a while. I've got a few things in the pipeline, and now my publishers have said that they might be interested in a thing that's not music related. So there are a few other things I'd like to do, but writing's quite solitary, and it takes ages. So I mean, I've got say 3 things on the go at the moment that will probably get there eventually, and it's good to have as many books out as you can, because it's because you don't hardly make any money unless that's why I advertise them all the time. I've kept Hellraiser in print, so eventually they do sort of boost up, and then hopefully what I want is someone to think, oh, that would be a good TV series or a TV film or something like. And I do get people saying that it would, so you never know your luck really. So that's you can't I've got a normal job where I work in a local bar, so I don't I'm not rich, so you have to keep as much stuff coming in as you can. So
yeah, it sounds like a couple of those books would make really great films. Has your publisher ever sent them out to agents or production companies? And
it doesn't work like that. I mean, it's really hard to get. I mean, it's really, really hard. It's really who and you just have to keep going. I mean, it was great. It's like Stuart Copeland. He read my first book and said, it melted his nightstand, which I thought was quite nice of him. He emailed me. Marcella Detroit, she posted up that she absolutely loved it. And now Patty's done it. It's, you have to get it noticed by people who might say they might then say to somebody, oh, have you read this? This is really good. And they might be someone who's influential. That's the only way. There's no other way of doing it. I mean, it's just not easy.
Right. So
I mean, most people that do TV series and stuff like that even Rupert Everett, who wanted to do the Oscar Wilde film, The Happy Prince, I mean, that took him 10 years to get the money to do that.
Right.
In one of your interviews, there's something I relate to on a personal level that was so funny to me, because Trey, my brother, was a drummer from the, age of 8, I think. And is that when you started drumming, Trace?
12 and a half.
What?
12 and a half.
Oh, okay. I thought it was earlier. But anyway, you mentioned, Nettie, you talked about growing up and hearing your father practicing on a practice pad and doing paradiddle. Oh, no, maybe your brother said he had to do paradiddles for like hours on end. And that's what I grew up with. I'm not a musician, but hours and hours of listening to this on a practice.
Well, no, with him, he did. He had, he had a practice pad and he would do that. But I think the worst thing was because, my bedroom, I shared the bedroom with them, but they would be in the living room and the record player was by the wall, and there were 2C drummers. Oh my God, that's all I ever heard. So, it's like people and it's like the Cream formed their first ever jam together. The 3 of them was in our front room, in our living room.
Wow.
And I was at school and came back, and they'd been playing, and they were like, wow. They looked out the window and all the kids from the fields out the back were dancing, and they thought, that's when Eric said, man, we're the Cream, and that's how the name came. And but I come in from school and there's all these people and you just think, oh, go away, I want me tea. You don't, it doesn't mean the same thing to you. Maybe someone could come in from the future and go, you know what, this is, quite important. But you have no idea as a child, do you? You just want to do what you want to do. You're interested in your own life. And although I did, I really liked Jack when I first met him, and then I supplanted him with Eric. I decided I liked Eric better when Eric came along. And Jack later, quite recently before he died, he said to me, yes, and I've never forgiven you for that. And we really laughed a lot about it. So, it was, very interesting time. Well, thing to grow up with. And I think because it's so vivid, that's why you remember it. But it was chaotic. It wasn't a calm childhood. And I think children do actually long for things to be normal. Sure. So I think I did, actually.
I was watching on YouTube they've been sending me on Facebook Cream videos for like months now. And one of the ones they sent me, anything related to and whoever was in Cream. And so they sent me this thing with Ginger in the Graham Bond organization with Ginger and Jack, and they're on a TV show. It's very campy. It's like late 60s. Ginger's wearing sunglasses. It's like they're beatniks or something.
No, it's a film. It's a film, and it's called Gonks Go Beat. You can buy it on Amazon.
Oh, what's it called?
It's Gonks Go Beat.
Oh,
Gonks Go Beat.
And it's a crazy, and there's a lot of other very famous, you just Google it and they will tell you the lineup. There's also some other famous 60s musicians in that as well. And you can either download it or you can probably buy it on Amazon. Sure. Or whatever you've got. You can get hold of it. I know you can get hold of it here. People are getting hold of it. It's a cult film from the 60s. And yeah, it's the only other colour film of them together. And it's a terrible film, but I mean, it's great for that footage. And there's a drum battle in it as well. So if you're getting stuff from the guys from Music of Cream, they actually know zero about anything, but they've managed to somehow, and they've stolen some of our stuff as well. So they send me round the bend because it's, people need to go to our website, which is gingerbaker.com, and our social media through that, which is run by the family, because and our press archives on there and our history archives on there. We were there, so we know what actually happened. But you tend to get people who, they'll send you something and they don't know what it is either. So I can tell you what it is, and it's that.
Well, that's good to get out. Gingerbaker.com is worth repeating. So, people know where to go. And the books are available on Amazon, I assume, right?
Well, they're all on Amazon, and I think you can order them on any, just type the title into the search engine. But also, Weimar UK has got all of them, and they will ship worldwide, and they convert currency automatically. And they're really helpful as well. You can email them. So they're called Weimar, WYMER UK.
Oh.
And all the books are also available from them. So if you have any trouble, you can get them from them, and they will ship wherever you are.
Oh, good to know.
Well, great. Well, we encourage people to do that. Anything last minute?
I don't know. I did have one. It's out of context. So of all the rock musicians out there that, your dad played through the decades, did he have any best buddies, pals?
Well, I think he says when he did the dedication for his book Hellraiser, obviously was in 2008, and he did mention, the dedication was to people he had lost. So there were people that had already died. And obviously the main, his influences were Art Blakey, Max Roach, Elvin Jones, Phil Seaman, all of whom he became friendly with and worked with, who he really admired. Jimi Hendrix was a close friend. Keith Moon was a close friend. John Bonham, which people don't realise. And I put a thing on my Facebook page recently where John Bonham actually rated my dad very highly, especially with the GBO. So, so in his dedication in Hellraiser, he tells you really who some very close friends were that he lost. I mean, Keith Moon, he was very friendly with him, and he has a good story, some very good stories about him and John Bonham. So, he was close with it. And of course, Ringo Starr, who's still alive, was a very close friend. And Eric Clapton was his best friend. The two that were there for him at the end was Eric Clapton and Charlie Watts. So they were friends to the end.
Well, I'm glad I asked the questions.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Well, thanks for coming.
And also the eulogies he got from people like Brian Wilson was amazing. Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, and people had said, "Oh well, he slagged them off." But I think they knew. You see, the thing is, about English people as well. Also, we've got a thing we call bants, which means we slag each other off, we insult each other, but it means you're being friendly.
Sure.
So I think my dad knew the Beatles early. I remember he was hanging out with the Beatles when he was in Grand Bomb, so early. 65, 66. So.
Right.
He knew them all really, really well. Obviously, he was friendly with Brian Jones, and he recommended Charlie Watts for the Stones. So, he was integrally involved with those people, and they all respected him. So I think, he didn't. It was later musicians. I mean, he had a fight with someone from Lords of the New Church and things like that. He didn't like anything. Although he ended up working for John Lydon, but he didn't like punk, but. No. Obviously, the fact he worked with John Lydon helped me, because then I went to a John Lydon gig a couple of years ago, and then I said, who I was, and we got in the dressing room. I was absolutely thrilled. He was so nice. He was so nice. So, I mean, that to me was a big thing. So, and Elton John, the two favourite people that when I met Elton John, I was absolutely thrilled because I'm a big Elton fan. So, slightly different music.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, thank you again for coming on the show. It was really fascinating.
yeah.
Well, you're welcome. I hope I told you some things that,
Well, we want to get the
that
word
would be
out.
helpful.
Yeah, and we
well,
encourage
please
everyone to go to weimeruk.com, is it? Or Amazon?
WeimerUK.co.uk, I think it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I mean, you can get them all there. I mean, you can just any of the titles, type them into the search engine, and you should be able to get them. I mean, you should. Someone said that Barnes and Noble wouldn't order one of them in, but I think they will.
They will.
But wherever you are, in the world, just check it. But Weimer will send anything wherever you are in the world, and they will convert the currency for you. But you can email them as well and say, "Help me! I don't understand what's going on," and they will help you. So they're also very good like that.
Terrific. Thanks so much for your time.
Again.
Okay.
Terrific.
Bye.
All right. Well, lovely to talk to you.
Great meeting you. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right then. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Yep. Good.